Hello friends, my name is JJ. And would you say that people believe more weird things these days than they did 30 years ago? And would you say that the weird things they believe have gotten weirder? That's the question I want to explore today as part of another thrilling entry in my ongoing study of American culture in the Lesser 30 era. The Lesser 30 is my name for the era of American history that spanned the years between 1993 and 2025. That's not exactly 30 years, but let's not get hung up on details. Anyway, it's called the Lesser 30 because it tends to be viewed as a less culturally transformative time than the Great 30 era before it. When it comes to urban legends and conspiracy theories, we can certainly say that the Great 30 was a pretty prolific age. This was the era of Bigfoot videos and UFO sightings and weird tales of murderous hitchhikers and evil cults and sinister CIA plots. You know, Wendigoon stuff. Regardless if you think this kind of thing was harmless or socially destructive, it was definitely a big part of the culture of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and tends to loom large in nostalgic recreations of the era. And that got me wondering about how the Lesser 30 era compares, whether there's been anything comparable added to the broad canon of American conspiracy theories and urban legends, and how American culture in general has changed its relationship with tales of the bizarre, paranormal, and unbelievable. So, urban legends usually describe strange or creepy stories about things that supposedly happened to individual people, while conspiracy theories are usually slightly more paranoid stories about secret plots affecting society as a whole. In practice, of course, there tends to be a lot of overlap between the two categories, like the story of a farmer finding their cows mutilated by aliens would be a classic urban legend, while the idea that the US government is covering up the existence of aliens would be a classic conspiracy theory, which makes the larger topic of aliens kind of both things. For the purposes of this video, I am mostly going to use the two terms together to refer to the general phenomena of people perpetuating strange or shocking claims with pretty weak evidence. When it comes to analyzing the culture of this kind of stuff in the Lesser 30 era, it is probably worth calling attention to the fact that urban legends and conspiracy theories have survived and thrived at all, because this wasn't something that people in the early 90s would have necessarily assumed was inevitable. I mean, back then it was easy to look at an increasingly computer-dominated society and the rise of the internet and assume things could go either way. I did an award-winning video a while ago where I mentioned how prior to the 90s it was much harder for people to verify what they had been told, which resulted in rumors and gossip playing a large role in the culture, including urban legends and conspiracy theories. Today, by contrast, we have an enormous wealth of information at our fingertips at all times, and yet it doesn't seem like this has made the spread of crazy stories any less common, which I guess suggests that this desire to spread and believe weird stories is rooted in something a bit deeper in the human condition. But talking of technology, I would say that one of the first major themes of conspiracy theories and urban legends in the Lesser 30 would be
new technology.
People who study this sort of thing like to tell you that conspiracy theories and urban legends tend to grow out of pre-existing social anxieties, and as computer-based technology came to play a larger role in our lives over the course of the Lesser 30, it was perhaps inevitable that people would come up with a bunch of scary and weird stories about our computers either hurting us or betraying us or hiding secrets from us and stuff like that. As anyone who has watched a VPN ad will know, the Lesser 30 has been an era of growing anxiety about digital surveillance and data harvesting. It's a broadly legitimate worry, but also one with a tendency to spiral into grand paranoid allegations that our cell phones and webcams and web browsers and all the rest are secretly keeping track of everything we do and sending the records straight to the FBI or CIA or Trilateral Commission or whatever. In earlier eras, fear of being spied on or recorded was a more self-evidently dubious delusion, just because the technology wasn't there. But now that mass public surveillance is more technologically plausible, allegations that there are elaborate corporate or government schemes afoot to monitor the speech and actions of ordinary people have become more common and persuasive. The creation of smaller and smaller microchips over the last 30 years, likewise, saw the emergence of fears that these tiny chips were being sneakily implanted into human bodies for some nefarious purpose. As I'm sure we all remember, conspiracy theories of this sort were quite popular during COVID, when some of the anti-vaccine people spread the rumor that vaccine shots were just a pretext for the government to chip you. But claims of secret microchip injections have been around since the early 1990s, which was when the technology of implanting tiny data chips in pets and farm animals first went mainstream. Timothy McVeigh, the evil conspiracy theorist who committed the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, for instance, believed that he had been chipped by the government when he was in the army. As video games became a more ubiquitous form of American middle-class entertainment throughout the Lesser 30, they naturally became a growing subject of urban legends as well. Sometimes these were innocuous things, like the rumor that Luigi was hidden in Mario 64, or that you could get a gun in Myst. Other times they were more scandalous and perverted, like the many claims that there were secret codes to get the female characters naked in Tomb Raider or Mortal Kombat. And then other legends could be quite dark and disturbing, like stories of people buying unmarked video game cartridges at yard sales that wound up being haunted and filled with scenes so horrific that the player was driven to madness or suicide. As our lives got more dependent on technology, it likewise became easier to spread fear of some looming total technological breakdown that would lead to complete societal collapse. You might hear rumors of a weaponized computer virus or some kind of high-powered energy attack like an EMP, or maybe an ominous internet kill switch that the powers that be have their finger constantly hovering over. The dawn of the new millennium in particular saw a lot of worry over the so-called Y2K bug, wherein computers supposedly wouldn't be able to process dates with years beginning with the number 2. It was a real problem, but a lot of broad tech-phobic conspiracy theories also got laundered into it. Some of you guys might remember John Titor, who was an internet character popular in the early 2000s, who claimed to be a time traveler from a future United States that had exploded into civil war and tyranny following a massive tech collapse in the aftermath of Y2K. A lot of tech collapse conspiracy theories were heavily bound up in ideas that the US government or UN or some other sinister cabal was just itching to impose martial law or global government over the United States, and a tech collapse would provide a convenient pretext. I must say, it is pretty interesting that over the last 30 years, there has been both so much fear spread about being abandoned by tech, as well as being enslaved by it. In other ways, though, modern technology has simply made some of the previous trends of American conspiracy theory and urban legends culture more efficient. Like, people have always been fascinated by creepy or mysterious pictures or videos. The internet has simply made it easier to gather and distribute them. The rise of social media, for instance, saw all sorts of urban legends about bizarre photos or video clips go viral. You know, like the time-traveling hipster, or the skunk ape, or the guy eating soup made from his dead wife. It is revealing that so many of these viral, weird, and mysterious photos and videos tend to be old, taken many years ago on film cameras or camcorders. I think this is partially because old stuff just always tends to give off a more mysterious vibe, but it also might reflect growing awareness of just how easy it is to fake more modern-looking photos or video. The Lesser 30 era was the first era of Adobe, after all. Something more truly unique was just stories about the internet itself. By the mid-2000s, the World Wide Web had grown so enormous it was possible to find all sorts of bizarre and mysterious websites, which people could then attempt to explain with conspiracy theories or urban legends. Examples would include places like hell.com or laughing horses orifices or 973 Etunama, strange and maze-like websites that were often rumored to be the work of secret societies or government agencies or cults. But you don't need me to curate a list of examples for you, of course. Collections of strange and unnerving internet content is so easy to find these days. Here on YouTube in particular, the last decade or so has seen an avalanche of channels that specialize in urban legend and conspiracy-based content, not necessarily because the creators believe in any of it, but just because audiences find this stuff so incredibly engaging to watch. Which brings us to our next major theme:
self-awareness
and entertainment.
I think perhaps the biggest and most important cultural development of conspiracy theory and urban legend culture in the Lesser 30 was the degree that we've started thinking about conspiracy theories and urban legends as basically a genre of American entertainment. There were a number of movies, for instance, released during the Lesser 30 that were based around popular tropes of American conspiracy theory and urban legend culture, including Men in Black, JFK, Independence Day, The Da Vinci Code, and the explicitly titled Urban Legend, as well as TV shows like Twin Peaks, The X-Files, Roswell, and even cartoons like South Park and Gravity Falls. There were urban legend and conspiracy theory-based board games and video games, as well as all sorts of other toys and novelties. Stuff like this illustrates the degree that conspiracy theories and urban legends during the Lesser 30 started to be appreciated on a kind of meta level for the first time. These were stories that much of the public didn't necessarily believe, but still found kind of exciting and entertaining just as stories or ideas. Some described it as a new category of secular American folklore, akin to fairy tales or even stories from the Bible. A related phenomenon was people just openly inventing brand new conspiracy theories or urban legends from scratch, basically as a form of art. This certainly describes the whole creepypasta phenomenon, wherein a creepy picture made with Photoshop, like Smile Dog or Jeff the Killer or Slender Man, is passed around with an urban legend-style backstory, which then becomes a part of a distinct internet folklore. I actually did a whole award-winning video about this cultural trend a few months ago. Other than maybe naive preteens, I don't think anyone ever really believed in creepypasta-type stories to any substantial degree. In large part because, unlike old-school urban legends, it was so easy to track down the people who wrote them. Like, the guy who invented Slender Man literally has it in his social media bio. Perhaps an even blunter example would be this thing, The Rake, which was introduced to the world in a 4chan post that began, "Let's make a new monster." The sheer amount of fan-made urban legends and conspiracy theories can actually sometimes get a little anticlimactic when you're trying to consume this stuff as a form of entertainment. I notice that whenever I'm watching one of those iceberg videos documenting a bunch of creepy stuff, half the time the host has to admit that the mysterious video or website or photo or whatever that had everybody all freaked out was actually just like a student art project or an alternate reality game.
It turns out that this was a massive art project by a man named Bruce Allen.
The real creator of the game turned out to be a person named Clara Hope. Turns out Clara made it for a school project originally. The whole thing was just an ARG.
The rise of ARGs in particular is quite revealing as far as this goes, given that ARGs so often take the form of an interactive conspiracy theory that you can be part of. Stuff like the Cicada 3301 mystery, or I Love Bees, or the Jejun Institute, which encouraged people to run around cities deciphering clues and codes communicated in posters and websites and mysterious phone calls.
Ornithopter! Ornithopter! Now we can get this transaction rolling.
They offered up all of the thrills of unveiling some unsettling web of intrigue with the peace of mind of knowing it was all just a fun game of make-believe. Since the 2000s, ARGs have emerged as a particularly popular form of marketing, especially for movies, albums, and video games. And the fact that conspiracy theories and urban legends can now literally be used as advertising just reveals the sheer extent of the public's appetite for them. Which leads us into our final theme,
mainstreaming
and politics.
Now, despite inhabiting a media environment where stuff involving conspiracy theories and urban legends was so often treated in an irreverent or self-aware or even satirical way, there remained a ton of Americans who continued to take all of this stuff very literally and seriously. In many quite worrying ways, I would say that America is actually leaving the Lesser 30 era with a belief in conspiracy theories and urban legends not only having failed to decline, but now quite deeply entrenched in some very powerful places. So the Great 30 era saw the rise of a number of very stridently anti-government conspiracy theories in American culture, in which Washington was often framed as masterminding all sorts of wicked schemes, from organizing the murders of JFK and Martin Luther King, to faking the moon landing, to poisoning the public with fluoridated water. This continued throughout the Lesser 30, with the conspiracists continuing to blame the American government for masterminding all of the great tragedies of this era, from the Waco disaster to the 9/11 attacks, to school shootings, to the COVID pandemic. And as was the case in the Great 30 and the decades prior as well, these anti-government conspiracy theories often overlapped with more generalized theories of elite corruption, in which the American ruling class was said to be beholden to things like mysterious cults or secret societies, or were actually undercover lizard people, or practitioners of black magic, or puppets of the oldest conspiracy theory stock villains of them all, the Jews. What was special about this era, however, was that after so many decades, the sheer quantity of so many anti-government conspiracy theories about so many different things really started to hit a sort of critical mass. Studies have shown that people who believe one conspiracy theory are much more likely to believe another, and by the end of the Lesser 30, you could be a person who believed nothing but conspiracy theories and still manage to hold a relatively comprehensive set of opinions on most of the top political, economic, and social issues facing the nation. In the same way that the increasingly robust conspiracy theory and urban legend canon provided a lot of ideas for writers and artists, so too could that canon provide a strong political identity to a certain sort of person. Conspiracism became a kind of identifiable ideology embodied by the obsessive conspiracy theorist as a familiar pop culture cliche. And as conspiracism became a more attractive and persuasive worldview to more and more Americans, it inevitably started to gain more traction as a force shaping American democracy. I'm sorry if this sounds partisan, but I feel like it's just a fact that conspiracism eventually gained its greatest traction in the Republican Party. There was definitely a time where some conspiracy theories were right-coded and in some conspiracy theories were left-coded. But once the leadership of the Republican Party passed to Donald Trump, a man who had flirted with a vast array of conspiracy theories himself, it proved to be a decisive turning point. In a fashion thoroughly unprecedented in modern American politics, Trump actively courted members of all sorts of different conspiracy theory subcultures, including Obama birthers, 9/11 truthers, JFK people, anti-Semites, and more. Now, I would argue that the Republican Party was uniquely susceptible to this sort of conspiracist takeover, just because it was already the party inclined to a pretty extreme skepticism of government, as well as being the party of preference for evangelical Christians who tend to be prone towards supernatural explanations of things. The QAnon movement, which emerged in the late 2010s and venerated Trump as a semi-divine figure, represented an effort to blend the tropes of multiple different American conspiracy theories and urban legends with right-wing politics and millennialist Christianity into a single, unified, paranoid narrative of how power works in America. QAnon would in turn play a key role in amplifying and justifying Trump's conspiratorial allegation that the 2020 election had been stolen from him, which would of course then culminate in the most dramatic and violent uprising of conspiracy theorists in American history on January 6th, 2021. Trump's second administration is now even more stocked with conspiracy theorists and urban legend believers of practically every flavor, including anti-vaxxers, UFO enthusiasts, and of course, plenty of QAnoners.
Even my hat has a hat.
Which represents an unprecedented achievement for the cultural force that is American conspiracism, but it also raises expectations quite high. From the millions of conspiracist Americans who elected Trump, the pressure is now on to finally produce definitive evidence proving the existence of aliens or demons or the microchip vaccines or the secret child sex ring that supposedly runs Hollywood. If that evidence isn't produced, which I will just go out on a limb and say is pretty likely, then I guess it's possible there could be some disillusionment or discrediting of conspiracism, and Trump's government could be come to seen as unserious and embarrassing. But knowing how these sorts of things usually go, I suppose it is also equally possible that Trump's inability to deliver the goods will just be used as a pretext to create even more elaborate and extreme anti-government conspiracy theories in which Trump will be framed as either a patsy or a puppet. Regardless, for partisan reasons alone, Trump has definitely made a lot of Americans look at our 30-year history of sharing, sentimentalizing, and even celebrating conspiracy theories and urban legends in a new, darker light. Like, the other day I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the recent reboot of King of the Hill, a show that originally debuted in the early years of the Lesser 30, and one of the hosts was saying how she just couldn't find Dale Gribble, the conspiracy theorist character, quite so charming anymore. But I'm curious what you guys think. What do you think about the role that conspiracy theories and urban legends have played in American culture over the last 3 decades? What's going to happen in the next 3? And what aspect of American culture in the Lesser 30 would you like to see me analyze next? Let me know in the comments. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.